All right, we begin in Nigeria. The Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators have refuted claims that the connected plans, or rather disconnections, happened because there were plans to disrupt the planned protests coming up this week. Now, the telco providers had put this letter, which says Alton's statement on line barring and unbarring. The attention of Alton has been drawn to some online reports linking the ongoing subscriber line barring exercise with planned national protests. They absolutely said there was no connection. The July 31st deadline was in place months ago, and that just happens to be a coincidence. We have with us the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, Engineer Gbenga Adebayo, to discuss this plus lots more. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. So the deadline was the 31st, right? And of course, we understand the coincidence. How come lines started getting barred before, and the deadline is tomorrow, so how come it started since the weekend? Can you provide some clarity on that?
Thank you for having me. First, the process of disconnecting lines takes a few hours. In order to meet up with the deadline, the action has to commence a few days before to be able to ensure that those services were deactivated before the said deadline. So it wasn't any action that was intended for any other motive other than that we needed to comply with already laid down guidelines and the instructions directed by the regulators. And you may recall that we have been on this since 2020. The last deadline was actually set for end of April this year. And when we came to that point, we provided information to government on where we are in terms of compliance of the SIM link linkage. And we sought an extension for a period of 3 months, which was granted. The 3 months will now lapse on 31st of July. And the process of having to disconnect commenced. And we just hope that people will do what they have to do so that we don't have this cycle of disconnection and reconnection again and again.
Okay, but some people, and I actually know a couple of people personally who had linked their lines years ago, but they still got disconnected. So how did that happen?
Now, the sequence is like this. You provided some information for the SIM management and registration process. Then you provided another set of information for the NIN process. Those two records must align. They must align by the order of names, by the order of date of birth, by mother's maiden name, and also by the biometrics. If there's any disparity in any of these records, this data will come back unverified. And then an onward action will be required for the enrollee to go to a center to go and normalize the record. In some cases, there are disparity in the names. Some other there are disparity in the photograph. Some other are disparity in the biometrics. But the bottom line is that those two records, the secondary and primary record, secondary record being the SIM rate record and primary being the NIMSI record, they must align. If they don't align, the records will come back as unverified. And until they are verified, you can't do anything. So what we have said to people is that even if you have attempted to link the two records together, you may have done that, but they may not have been verified. And if they are not verified, then it is not validated. So when people get a call, a response to say, NIN linkage has been done, but verification is required, an onward action is required to harmonize the record, then people will be required to visit those centers, whether to normalize the disparity in the biometrics or to normalize the disparity in the optics. As the case may be, whatever the area of differences are, individuals will have to attend those centers to be able to harmonize the records. And then,
but I think I want to stick on this point, because so why the time lag? Because so I mean, if there's no harmonization between primary and secondary, as you said, shouldn't that notification come within 24 hours of the data capture rather than?
No, it does. And the fact is that people get this notification, but people just take their own conclusion to say, I have done it. Even though they have received a call to action to say, you've done your verification, you've done your integration, but it hasn't been verified. And people just ignore that call for action. And that's where we go to where we are. There is no one who has had a call to visit a center who has been there and getting there and having to do nothing. No. So if you have done the linkage between your SIM and your NIN, and you still have a call to visit a center, whenever you visit, there will always be something that has been found in the harmonization of the records. And that's why we're saying that when you get that call for action, you must take that onward required action in order to complete the process.
Okay.
So what has happened is that people just refuse to follow that process when they get a request for them to visit the center, taking their own conclusion that I have done it and I have done it.
Okay, fine, perfect. Thank you for laying that out. So, but that call to action is a text? Is it what are
yes, text message.
Text message.
Text messages, yes.
But okay, so I mean, cutting a line off is pretty serious stuff, right? Is it possible that, to follow up on a text, maybe you get a call message or an automated message, hey, listen, your identification or what you submitted doesn't align, you will be disconnected. You need to come.
In some cases, when lines fall in that bucket, when people make a call, when people enrollees make the call, they actually get the notification that your line is not linked with your SIM. Please visit an enrollment center.
Okay.
And people do that. People get those messages. Once they are in that bucket of records not verified, they continue to get reminders that has to be done, but people just ignore it. And what we also seen is appalling, because you see a few seniors who have come to complain that I've done my registration, my line is disconnected. When you go to the details, you find out that the number was actually registered there by their driver, their office assistant, their steward, or a friend or a brother. And we've seen that, and in some cases, it's very embarrassing, actually. There's an individual who came up and said, I've done this, I've done it. When we went back to the data, we found out that, yeah, the number is his, the line is his, he's had it for many years, but the photograph on the record is actually his driver's photograph. We've had cases like that. So, and individuals just feel that they have done what they've been asked to do, and they think that is it, take it like that. And it can't work like that. If we have primary record, you have secondary record, and we're saying that the process demands that those two records must align. It has to be. And again, the time has come when, as a people, we must have credible and reliable national database. We can't continue to work the way we work as it's working, it's not working, take it or leave it. No. There is nowhere in the world where you have two separate dates of birth. People have it here. There's nowhere in the world where you have two separate maiden names, or middle name, or first name. But here we have many cases like that. You hear somebody who will say, my name is Ademola Gbenga, and then his official name is Demola Gbenga. I mean, those are two names that are similar, but they're not necessarily the same names. And we're saying that the primary record must agree with the secondary record. That's the only way by which we can have credible national database. And we all must own this process. We can't leave it to the operators. We can't leave it to NIMS agents alone. Yeah.
Is there any way to, okay, so there are fintechs, I've opened accounts with some fintechs where I just simply pick up my phone, take a selfie, and send in KYC. Is there any, and it's, I'm verified. Is there any way to make this process faster and more digitized, so where you don't have to go to a center? Is there anything,
you see,
what can that be? Is that possible?
Yeah, where biometrics are involved, this is people's fingerprint.
Yeah.
Where the iris are involved, you can't do that by proxy.
Okay.
You can't do that by just sending a few messages and assume that this will be sorted out. If you need to have your fingerprint captured, it must be captured. You need to have your facial captured, it must be captured. You can't do it by sending a photocopy, send this and that. No, it can't work. Particularly when we are building a national database. It's something that it's actually a digital infrastructure. It's one of our socio-economic infrastructure. Without having that reliable national database, even fintech is very difficult because you must identify who is at the other end of the divide. The trust we require to build a digital economy will not be there if you don't have reliable database. And that database can only be as reliable as the kind of feed we put into it.
Okay, I want to go back to the notification because, okay, let me take an example. We are streaming on YouTube and also on DSTV. As my personal DSTV subscription, I have 5 days left until it's disconnected. If I don't make a payment, I will not be able to watch my DSTV, right? And it's on my television right now, there's a sign that says 5 more days left to this thing, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, and then is it possible to increase the frequency to which you notify someone whose data doesn't align? Because I mean, I'm sorry to harp on that point. Is that possible? Can we get more?
There can't be any better reminder than each time you try to make a call.
Yeah.
You get a voice notification that your number is not linked. The problem is that people just ignore those messages.
Right.
Yeah, you having text alert on your DSTV.
Right.
You're having a text to say go and do it. If you ignore it, you could get used to it after 2 days.
Right.
I will do it, and the time may come that you just get disconnected. So the need for people to take that step when there's that call made to say, you need to do this for this to happen. People must be responsible enough to take those steps.
So can we say this is 100% the case that every single person that got barred, somehow there was the harmonization wasn't there? Because there are some people who have businesses whose productivity was impacted by this disconnection. Are we absolutely sure that it's 100% and there were no errors made?
We are seeing quite a number of variants. We are seeing quite a number of them. But the primary thing is that issue of harmonization remains a major problem. When those records don't align and it's not verified, it's difficult. There are also cases where the systems, the information is uploaded and the system come back unverified. There are still cases where there are delays in the turnaround time. And that can lead to somebody say, I've done it in the last 2 days, I've still not had my line on bad and all that. So those kind of things happen. But the fundamental problem is that if the harmonization of data is not completed, whether by way of the data you provide or by way of the action that you're required to take and you do not take, bottom line remains that it's an effort made, well extracted, but well wasted.
Okay, so we've gone from one deadline to the next in terms of this NIN SIM harmonization. I think deadline in December, then deadline in April, now deadline for July 31st. Now the NCC has come out and said, okay, reconnect everybody and then give them some more time to get this done. What's the next steps now? When is the next deadline, or what happens next?
Again, we started in 2020. This was meant to end in 2023.
Yeah.
We went to the regulator to say, give us till April. They did. In April, we said, give us till July. They did. To be honest, to ask more for extension of time, I would say it's a bit difficult, actually.
Okay.
Because we have done that more than 4 or 5 times. People just have to do it. And at some point, we all need to take responsibility and we need to draw the line. It's a pity that this coincides with this discussion around public protest, and it's just unfortunate that there is a narration around that it's now because of certain reason that this is, but it's just very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And you know that when people want to propagate fear and all of that, these are the kind of tools that they will use. But I will say that after this period, I will not subscribe to any long extension of time again. People just have to do what they have to do. You know, also in the intervening period, people who have had their line disconnected, they have gone to those centers to validate their identities and they have had their lines restored. So if some can do it, why not everyone? Why not others?
So what I'm saying now is that with following what the regulator has said that they need to be reconnected, to sort this process out, is there going to be a new deadline in order to get this done? Because right now we're still working with July 31st.
Yeah, we are now in an extended period. July 31st is tomorrow, so we've been asked to reconnect those who are reconnected. How long that window will be, I cannot say at this time. But the fact remains that it has to be done. And at some point, we all must own this national database. We all must be subscribers to this national database for our common good. Again, as I said, for you to relate with somebody at the other end of the call, you must be able to say for certain, this is who it is. It can't be by pseudonym, it can't be by proxy, it has to be by the fact and details of that individual. And we all must aim towards that. I don't see many countries in the world where people have 2 different dates of birth, where people have 2 different occupations, where people have multiple combinations of names that you can't relate to the same, where people live by pseudonym and aliases. You can't build a sustainable national database in that regard. Date of birth should be constant, name should be constant, people should be identifiable. In some cases, we are seeing somebody reporting on the SIM record that he's a pilot. On the NIN record, he's a journalist. Somebody says he's a medical doctor on the SIM record. On the SIM record, he's a pastor. So how do you explain all that? Yeah. So those uniformity has to be guaranteed for us to have reliable database.
Okay, so in cases where there was an error, what's the compensation? Like I go back to the business now. We ran a report. Our colleague Georgina Ndukwe in Abuja talked to one particular businessman who said he was impacted on productivity. In cases where there was an error, surely there has to be some kind of compensation or something for folks who have lost productivity. If if it turns out that their data was valid?
Yeah, that will be on case by case.
Yeah.
We can't be general about it. That
Okay.
will be case by case. We need to drill down to those individuals and find out where the error occurred.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I do want to, since look, it's not every day we have you on the show, so we've sorted this. Oh, sorry. I mean, we read your letter, so just once again, just clear it for everybody watching. There's no connection between this disconnection and the protest, right?
There is no connection between the disconnection of services for those who have not linked their NIN with their SIM record with the planned protest.
Right.
We provide services on non-discriminatory basis. We have no political affiliation, we have no cultural affiliation, we have no bias to anyone. Our social contract to the public is to provide services to all persons at all time in all places, irrespective of their views and beliefs. We uphold that, and that's what we stand for. So we have nothing to do, it has nothing to do with the protest, nothing to do with the agitation that is ongoing. It's just unfortunate that a few people took that and they used that as a tool to whip up public sentiment.
I know. I mean, it was just unfortunate time because this July 31st deadline.
I know already the records are there.
Yeah.
The records are there.
Yeah,
the records are there that the extension dates were granted. Deadlines were set and timelines were set.
Yeah.
Just unfortunate that this coincides with this period.
And then there's fuel scarcity as well. So, so the whole thing, just the perfect storm. People just said, "Oh my gosh, they want to disrupt movement and disrupt our phone lines." Okay, good. So thank you for clearing that up. It's just a coincidence. But since you're here, I need to go back to the open letter that you wrote. We took that letter extensively, where you talked about the cost of doing business. I just want to bring up a couple quotes from that letter that you wrote a few months ago. We took some excerpts extensively on this. So here you are saying, while the digital innovation in Nigeria is enabling exciting new possibilities, there's a tendency to focus on those opportunities to the detriment of the core infrastructure on which it rides on. Got a couple other quotes from the letter that you wrote there. And also you said, the continued development of core infrastructure has to be sustainable. And over the last few months, we have begun to see the challenges that the operators that provide it are facing. So you talked a lot about infrastructure and what the providers are facing, and then you said there needs to be cost-effective tariff. There you go. Cost-effective tariffs, like it or not, are simply non-negotiable. We have seen the impact of price controls in other segments of the economy, like power. If providers cannot operate sustainable business models, then they stop investing. When that happens, the existing infrastructure starts to crumble. But you also looked at the social side and you acknowledged the challenges people are going through. So you also said that while we understand that people in Nigeria are facing, cost of living, they are still, essentially using these services. Yeah, there we go. It says, we fully understand and appreciate the financial stress that Nigerians are experiencing today. And it's interesting, you wrote this months ago, and here we are talking about the cost of living protest. So the cost of living is the single most significant factor in most people's daily lives. But those people are still able to enjoy the benefits that connectivity brings at the price they paid before these challenges became so acute. And then you also said that this is something that needs to be focused on, and it has to come to a head. So it says, you said, we need to find a long-term sustainable and manageable solution to the problem. Prices will need to rise, but actions need to be taken in a measured way through sustainable conversations and partnership with the government. It's time to address this. And we really wanted to bring up this so that everybody is aware of your position. So since then, any discussions with government? What's happening with cost reflective?
Well, the fact hasn't changed, I must say. The facts and the details we have highlighted in the statement we made a couple of months ago remain the same. And the fact that we're now talking about some actions like around the high cost of living alludes to the fact that it is what it is. We are taking steps as appropriate. We are working with all the stakeholders. A few demands have been put on us by our regulator in terms of quality of services, improvement of quality of services, transparency of our tariff, in order to be able to further justify a request for a review. But the bottom line is that we need to repair our tariffs.
Right.
Certainly our tariffs are faulty. They need to be repaired, and they must reflect the actual cost of providing services. I can't say it more than what the country experiences today. I can't say more than what the individuals experience today. Telephone is the most impactful service. It has been seen as a tool of life, as a tool of economic and social development, and there is a cost of providing the service. And I think that for it to be sustainable, we must price right. So we maintain that there is a need to repair our tariffs. As an industry, we must also improve on what we deliver to the people, and that's what we are working on. We're also doing some self-regulation by way of self-audit on our pricing, on our time, on our structure, so that at the appropriate time, we can make the right narration to government. But the facts of the issues haven't changed. They are still what they are. And what you have seen in the last 2 days about this issue of disconnection and the reaction of the public goes to show the kind of impact communication services have on the life of the people.
It's everything.
Today, unfortunately, one of our members have announced the closure of their offices across the country because of the destructions they had yesterday because of this.
Oh, wow.
And it's very unfortunate, but that goes to show how impactful telecommunication services can be. So imagine if things go out of hand, operators can no longer provide services. You can imagine what to be in the life of the people.
Right.
So, and I think that as stakeholders, there are things that we must handle very carefully. We must stop to be emotive about it. We must look at the facts as it stands, and the right steps and right actions has to be taken. My appeal to the public is that we are here to provide services. We will continue to provide the services. What has happened in the last 2 days has nothing to do with the strike, with the planned protest. There's no attempt to make life of the people difficult, but we are a highly regulated industry. And part of the success we have seen in our sector is the effectiveness and the efficiency of our regulators. If we don't comply with regulatory guidelines and instructions, we will not have an effective industry like what we have. And so the growth that we are seeing is also traceable impact to our ability and willingness to comply with rules and regulation as laid and as made from time to time. So as an industry, the deadline was set for SIM and integration. It wasn't met. We made cases. It was extended. We make it was extended. That means also that we have listening regulators. But that doesn't change the fact that what has to be done has to be done. And so, in what has happened is an attempt for us to comply with regulatory directive and instruction at its stand, which part of which enhances the growth of our industry. And for it to work and to continue to work, we must try and do the right best possible things, including the right pricing, repairing of our tariff as it stands, safety of our workers, safety of the work environment, and all that. Because now that we've had vandalization on some of the outlets yesterday, what happened?
So
outlets vandalized. Yeah. Today, one of us has issued a statement that they're going to close down their shop from today. And what affects one affects the other.
Right.
At the end of the day, we are all component members of one network. We're all one national network. So what affects one affects the other. And this is why I sit here in my position as the chairman. And so the problem is that the public should not see us as the enemy in this regard. I think they know where to take the fight to. It shouldn't be to the doorstep of the telecom operator, because we're also victims of what is going on. You can see in our cries for price review, you can see in our complaint about high cost of providing services and all of that. It's because we are not insulated from the socio-economic environment. And so the pain of the public is also the pain that we feel. And ours is even more impactful because our services are provided around the clock. So whether diesel costs £1 or it costs 1,000 and 1,000 plus, we must provide services. Whether security and access become a problem or not, we must provide services. And you can see that as difficult as it is even in some part of the country to guarantee availability of services, we continue to do our best to provide services. Against this, what we're asking from the public is protect us, protect our people, protect our infrastructure. Let's have the right operating environment. And of course, let's have the right pricing.
Yeah. I also have to bring up this USSD matter with the bank. So the last data we have as at December of 2023 was that about 200 billion was still being owed. This is the USSD matter. So I'm guessing this amount has increased since then. Any updates on the discussions with the banks?
Unfortunately, no. We haven't made much progress. We are like gravitating around the same point. And I must say again that the banks do have a moral obligation to clear this debt because they have the money.
Right.
These are services that has been paid for. I think the banks have a moral obligation to clear the debt.
Well, they're about to be taxed FX. It's the FX windfall tax that's coming for them. But yeah, I guess what you're saying. Yeah.
Because these are services that people have paid for. And we can't argue around it was provided in this form or in that form. And they enjoy the money. And so they have a moral obligation, actually, to pay that money. Yeah. And now that we're talking about this tax that you mentioned, it would be nice for people in authority to actually consider what is due to the telecom sector.
Right.
Because if you inject that money now into the industry, you will have significant impact.
Right.
Imagine what that can do by way of capital injection to the telecom sector today. This over 200 billion that we're talking about. And so what is good is good. If it's not good, it has no other name. They must pay that money. And it's a burden on them.
I guess, yes, there's this whole debate around a telco-led financial system or a bank-led financial system. So Kenya, of course, is telco-led. Nigeria is bank-led. You're with the telcos. Should telcos compete with banks?
Yeah, but you have seen the impact on the financial services.
Yeah.
You have seen it.
Yeah.
Today, the banks don't even have cash. The banks don't give cash across the counter, according to what I'm told.
Yeah, of course,
people take money from digital sources.
Yeah.
So that's just go to say it.
Yeah.
The last mile to get to the subscriber is actually through the telecom services. So the argument around who should lead or who should not lead, facts have shown today that if you actually talk about financial inclusion, the driver should be the telecom sector.
Yeah. Engineer, it's always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for coming on the show to clear this up. Engineer Gbenga Adebayo, Chairman of the Association of Licensed Telco Operators of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News.